Hello, everyone. Welcome to our January Lunch and Learn for Spotlight Solutions. We are specialists in regulatory compliance and boosting safety culture for organizations across industries. We are located in Boston, Massachusetts, serving many states in the US. And I am very excited to introduce to you today our Director of Safety Resources, Shavana Ohneswere. Shavana has been working in biotech and manufacturing spaces for 15 years. She is first in research capacity as a microbiologist, and then as a safety professional. She has completed Tier 2 reporting in Massachusetts for the past 5 years, allowing her to see the changes that have been made in this year's reporting requirements for Tier 2 tracking and reporting for small businesses in Massachusetts. So, Shavana, I'm pleased to present you with the stage, and please take it away.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this talk on Tier 2 reporting in Massachusetts for the 2025 reporting session. We are very excited to have you, and I think we'll get started with the presentation. Thank you, Melody. So again, this is for Tier 2 tracking for small businesses in Massachusetts. So just as a background, what is Tier 2 reporting? This is part of the Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act of 1986, also known as EPA. So this is dealing only with the reporting of threshold quantities for planning purposes. So the purpose is to make sure that any sort of high hazard chemical that we have on site is being reported to the emergency management agencies so that they can properly prepare and plan for that. In Massachusetts, that's our State Emergency Response Commission, known as the CERC, and we report to them through the HasConnect online reporting platform. We also will report this information via email to the local emergency planning committee, known as the LEPC, via your emergency management director, which is a new position that has been introduced this year as part of this reporting. So previously, you would report directly to the LEPC. That list has been replaced online with the emergency management director list for your community. You'll contact them to find out if you have an additional local emergency planning committee to report to. I want to acknowledge that there is a lot of changes and uncertainty happening at the federal level right now, but it's important to remember that the goal of this is to provide our first responders with the most accurate information on potentially hazardous chemicals in case they have to do an emergency response to your site. So the goal is to make sure that we can keep our firefighters and other first responders informed and that they can have the information to plan and have their resources necessary if anything were to happen at your site. So Tier 2 reporting is overseen by the EPA as well as the state environmental protection agencies in Massachusetts. That's our Mass DEP. It is a retrospective report. It's for the quantities that were on site in the previous calendar year at your facility, and it's for the maximum amount that you had on site, even if it was only for a brief time. Generally, it's required for all facilities who maintain safety data sheets. There are some exemptions, but we will not be covering them. This is for the assumption that you are required to have safety data sheets under an OSHA regulation. It's a measurement of the aggregate quantities of specific chemicals in weight. So a lot of the chemicals that we're talking about are liquids that we normally think about them in volumes like liters or gallons. The only thing Tier 2 is concerned about is the weight in pounds. It is due annually by March 1st for all states, and it is a free filing in Massachusetts. There are penalties associated with not reporting your Tier 2 volumes accurately and annually. They can actually go up to $50,000 per violation, but they use a fine formula to weigh the extent and gravity of the violation to come up with a more reasonable amount if they don't think that the violation is as significant as others might be. Example fines from previous years have been, if it's late, you can be fined $12,000 for being 30 days late. If it's more than 30 days late, it can go up to $25,000. And if your report is not complete, you can also be fined for missing chemicals. In some cases, those fines could be up to or around $16,000 per year missed. But again, that is dependent on the amount of chemical that was not listed in your report and the potential severity of that chemical release. how do we find out what we need to report? So conveniently, the EPA makes a consolidated list of all of the different reporting requirements that they oversee. They call that the list of lists. So you can find that on the EPA website. Any of the listed chemicals that exceed the reporting quantity at any time during the previous year should be reported. It does come in a PDF version, but they were kind enough to let us have a Excel version for searchability. So we do recommend using that Excel version. And you can see up in the upper right corner of the PDF version, they have the date that it was issued. So you can make sure that you're using the most up-to-date version. On the list of lists, this is what the Excel version looks like. You can see that there are several different reporting thresholds and reporting quantities listed here. We're interested in the EPA 302 EHS TPQ for this discussion. That is the emergency planning notification requirement. EHS TPQ refers to the threshold planning quantity. And you can see to the right, there's other EPA notifications that we will not be covering in this talk, but that have to do with emergency release notification and the reporting quantities for that. And you can see here in the upper left of the Excel sheet, all the information for this particular list of lists and when it was issued. So you might have noticed me saying EHS. So for safety professionals, that normally means something different. When we're talking about Tier 2, it means extremely hazardous substances. So it puts emphasis on specific chemicals due to the potential severity associated with the physical hazards of those chemicals. So you'll see those referred to as the EHS TPQ as in the previous slide. One thing to note about EHSs is they will have a listed TPQ, but there is a clause about them in this legislation that refers to anything that is at any time, one time, equal or greater amount of 500 pounds or the threshold planning quantity, TPQ, whichever is lower. So when we're talking about the EHSs, the effective reporting quantity is actually 500 pounds if the TPQ is above 500 pounds. When we're looking at common things that we see in biotech and manufacturing clients for small businesses in Massachusetts, some things that might trigger this kind of reporting is ammonia cooling systems. You have to look at the weight. So if you're trying to think of what volume you have on site, that might trigger this reporting. Around 83 gallons of ammonia is enough to trigger reporting. Another thing that a lot of companies might have is formaldehyde, especially if you have animal care facilities or any other sort of tissue work on site. You're looking at about 64 gallons of formaldehyde to trigger reporting. If you have nicotine on site, that one has a lower value, so it's only up to 100 pounds is allowed on site before reporting, so that's about 12 gallons. And then the one that we're really going to be focusing on that we see the most commonly, it affects biotechs and small manufacturing companies, is sulfuric acid. So listed in the Excel sheet, it'll say 1,000 pounds, but we know from that clause that it's actually 500 pounds that we need to report at. And because sulfuric acid is quite a bit heavier than water, it's actually only 33 gallons or so before that reporting threshold is met. So most of us have in biotech have some stock reagent of sulfuric acid, but there are other sources in other places that also need to be accounted for. Mostly what we're going to focus on here is lead acid battery reporting because it does take a little bit of legwork to get the information needed to know whether or not you have enough lead acid or sulfuric acid in your lead acid batteries to need to report. The EPA gives us two options for how to report. If you have sulfuric acid only in lead acid batteries, then you can report the lead acid batteries with the component of sulfuric acid. But if you, like most biotech and manufacturing companies, if you have sulfuric acid in another source, like a reagent stock, you have to aggregate the amount of sulfuric acid in the batteries and add that to the stock reagent that you have. When we're tracking these on-site batteries, places that we look for them are emergency generator engines, powered industrial trucks like forklifts and electric pallet jacks and other things that would have a battery associated with them. And then one that I think kind of sneaks under the radar is uninterruptible power supply batteries, also known as UPSs. So our IT server rooms tend to have a lot of these batteries in them. They can also be found in labs with large or continuously running equipment like HPLCs, and equipment panels for facilities related things like boilers and other things that run continuously and you don't want them to be interrupted. If you're not familiar with them, they look a lot like maybe a small desktop computer. When we're tracking these on-site batteries, we do actually need to know quite a few different things about them. So we need to know the brand and model of the battery containing equipment, the model of the battery specifically, its weight, the sulfuric acid content, number of units if you have more than one unit of it, the location, and ideally if you have an asset ID that can help you track it if it moves, if it needs to be replaced or is disposed of. So we highly recommend working with your IT, facilities, operations, and warehouse staff to make sure that you do find out where all of these things are located in your facility. To get this information, first you'll need the equipment information panel where you would find the serial number, usually on the back of a piece of equipment. That would give you the brand, model, and potentially the battery model number. Battery weight, we'll have to look up a product data sheet or a battery replacement data sheet. And then for the sulfuric acid content, we're going to go back to the safety data sheet in section 3 where all of the components are listed out to find out exactly for that specific battery what the content of sulfuric acid is. These are some examples. So APC is a very common manufacturer of UPS batteries. And so we were able to pull this replacement battery cartridge as an example. You can see here that there's a net weight for the battery product that's listed. And then here on the safety data sheet for the same product, there is a sulfuric acid content. And so we can use that for our further calculations. For each type of battery, we'll need to multiply the battery weight in pounds by the percentage of the sulfuric acid, and then the number of batteries to get the total amount of sulfuric acid for that battery type. For stock reagents, again, we want to use the maximum on-site volume that you had in the previous calendar year. So the reagent volume in gallons would be multiplied by the sulfuric acid content if it's less than 1 normal in order to account for any water that's in there. And then you would divide that by, again, the reagent density and then multiply it by the number of bottles to find out what your total amount of sulfuric acid on type is. Then you would sum together all of those numbers to find out your aggregate amount. If it's greater than 500 pounds, then you will need to file a Tier 2 report on the Massachusetts Has Connect system. So once you've got all of those bits of information together, you can have a tracking sheet that looks something like this, where we have the location of all of the different sources of sulfuric acid, what is the brand and model, what is the battery model for the battery sources, and then we have the weight, lead content, sulfuric acid content, how many units, and then a total for each type of battery, how much acid is in them. And then on the bottom, we have our stock reagent with the 5, just as an example, we have some 5 normal sulfuric acid and then some sulfuric acid solution at 72%. And then we add up the weight of those again. And in this example model that I made, we've just pushed over 500 pounds of sulfuric acid. The general makeup for this is that there is some HPLCs running in the lab. Those HPLCs also have sulfuric acid associated with some of their work, or any other type of equipment that you might use that's running continuously that needs that kind of reagent. And then there's also the IT batteries for their server rooms. There's a manufacturing suite that might have a UPS to maintain power. And then a few things from different facilities. So the generator battery and then an equipment panel. To make a report on the online Has Connect, you do have to make a personal login. You can add more than one facility to the same profile, so you don't need to worry about if you change positions or anything like that. You can continue to use that same login. It does have to be processed at the Mass DEP, but we've had relatively good luck with them processing them very quickly. It usually takes less than a day for them to approve a new login. Once you're in the HasConnect system, it's all hosted online, so you don't have to worry about downloading anything. Then you fill out your information about your company. You do need to know your company's NAICS or NIACS code. And in this example, we've put in the common code for biotechnology. Most of our facilities would be considered manned. That means there's somebody actually on site at the location, and then the maximum number of occupants at any time. You'll see here, there's also something about the Dun and Bradford number, but if you don't have one, or if you're not sure what it is for your company, you can just put NA in that. Once you're in, you can see at the top of the screenshot, there's all of the steps. And once your step is completed, it'll give you a green check if the step has not been completed, or if the system believes there's an error in your data, then it'll have that exclamation point telling you to go take another look at that. So you'll start by going to the Add Chemical section. Starting in the chemical description, you'll put in the CAS number and the name of the chemical. So in this case, for sulfuric acid. Interestingly, it actually does know if your chemical based on the CAS number is an EHS or not. So it will auto fill out that it's an EHS. In this case, we're reporting it as pures, not mixtures. And we have to put in what the state of it is, so liquid in this case, and the physical hazards, corrosive to metal, and then in the health hazards, corrosive skin corrosion or irritation. As you scroll down this page, because this is an extremely hazardous substance, it'll ask you for more information, including how that substance arrives on your site. This is really, the example they give shows it's really more for large shipments, like if you were having a tanker drop off sulfuric acid. So some of the answers we do have to get a little creative with. Mode of shipment in general, we're going to have trucks that are coming. The average shipment is based off of your site's usage. And then the maximum capacity per vessel carrying that EHS, we use whatever the maximum amount. If you're ordering a lot of stock reagent, you could say that it's the maximum of your stock reagent. In this case, because the largest amount of sulfuric acid was found in a forklift battery in our example, I put if both forklifts batteries were to be replaced at the same time, we would have a total of 230 pounds of sulfuric acid moving to the site. So for this example, that's the most that we could have, but you want to just use whatever the most is that you anticipate having on site. And then again, at the bottom, maximum shipment received at one time and the average shipment received annually can all be the same number. The physical state in transit, and then it'll ask you for the routes of travel. In general, because we're not using tanker trucks and we don't have that direct control over how a commercial distribution is going to provide us these reagents, I recommend putting in the highways that are closest to you, especially making sure that it's hazmat approved routes. If you don't want to imply that anybody will be coming through the tunnel or anything like that with a hazmat material. So we can trust that our commercial shippers will not do that, but we can just put in hazmat approved highways and then whatever highways are the closest to your location. For the current primary carrier name, we would put what your source of that material is. So in this case, in this example, we use Sigma as our chemical supplier and Crown Lift Trucks as the supplier of those forklift batteries. And then for the address of the 24-hour emergency line, that's for the supplier, we use the Chemtrex number from Sigma's safety data sheets, as well as the address provided there. Once you finish the chemical description, you'll have to save at the bottom of the page and then come over to the inventory and storage location. This will ask you how much do you have on average on site. We can use that total maximum amount that we have from our site, so 100 or 510 pounds per day. It'll autofill the maximum daily amount code for you. Average daily amount, I put 505. 505 was actually what we had. I put 510 as the maximum amount in case there's some overlap, and then we have a little bit of overage. We've accounted for that. and the number of days on site. I'm saying these were on site all last year, so 365 days. And then is the chemical being voluntarily reported? In this case, no, we are required to do this report. Continue scrolling down on this page and it'll give you the storage locations list. This is when you would need to put in a location for each of your sources of sulfuric acid. So in this case, our inventory had an emergency generator battery. So we'll put in that it's an above ground tank where the location is. And then in the description, we put emergency generator battery. And you'll go through and put that in for each of your different types of storage. So for the labs, we actually have two sources or two locations because they're both in the UPS batteries in the lead acid battery housing. And then they're also in glass jugs in the stock reagents. So you just want to make sure that you're adding each type as clearly as you can. And these locations will get stored and added to that list at the top of above where you're adding the storage locations. And again, then you'll want to just make sure that you save that. The next section, you want to just make sure it will automatically have it filled that you are subject to 312. Then you want to put yes, that you are subject to section 302. That's what this reporting for tier 2 it falls under. And then you'd have to determine, does your company have to report under either of these other sections, sections 112R for risk management program or section 313 for toxic relief inventory. Last step that you're going to need to do in HasConnect is make sure that you have your emergency coordinators listed. So you'll have one person that is the emergency planning coordinator, and then you'll have to have people that are listed as your emergency contacts. That'll typically be your emergency coordinator and emergency coordinator backup, but it could also be your facilities manager and your chemical hygiene officer, or however the responsibilities for tier 2 are broken up at your facility. After you've submitted the report on HasConnect, you are not quite done. This is when we need to download the file in the .t2s format and save it to your computer. You will also need to download EPA's Tier 2 Submit software for the previous calendar year. So it's always 1 year back because it's a retrospective report. So in 2025, we're using Tier 2 Submit 2024. Then you would upload that T2S file from HasConnect into the Tier 2 Submit software, make any corrections as needed, and then download the file again from Tier 2 Submit. This is to make sure that when we send it to the fire departments, they're able to upload it into their databases accurately, and it'll show where your facility is located and what kind of potential hazards are on your site so that they can see it very clearly in case they're responding to you or anyone else in your area. Then you would email that T2S file as an attachment to your emergency management director and ask them if it needs to go to the LEPC separately. In some cases, the LEPC is also that emergency management director. In some cases, it's two separate entities. You will not be able to forget this when you log into HasConnect. This is the notification that they have at the bottom. So they are very clear in letting you know that you have to also complete the second email submission step. So in conclusion, Tier 2 reports are due March 1st annually for the previous year's quantities. Sulfuric acid as a component of lead acid batteries has to be aggregated and then reported if it is over 500 pounds. Other chemicals on your inventory may also need to be reported. So you want to make sure that you are double checking all of your chemicals against the list of lists to make sure that you're not over the reporting amount. And again, remember that it is listed in weight. So you will have to do a conversion to make sure that you are not required to report those chemicals. Massachusetts Tier 2 reports are filed on the online HasConnect platform. And then those T2S files that have been reviewed in Tier 2 Submit are also sent to the Emergency Management Director and LEPC via email. There is no fee for filing, but there may be penalties if you fail to report. If anyone has any questions, we'd be happy to take them. If something comes up later, you can also contact us at info@spotlightsafetyinc.com.
Thank you so much, Shavana. That was incredibly informative. We have a few minutes for questions. If anyone would like to leave some questions in the comments. Shavana can answer them in real time. You can also feel free to, as Shavana said, email us at info@spotlightsolutions.com at any time, and we'd be happy to get back to you. I'm also adding some links in the comments that Shavana asked me to make accessible to everyone, so posting those now. And yeah, do we have any questions? Any questions at all? Thank you so much for attending. We are available anytime. Check out our website at spotlightsolutions.com. We also have a safety app that creates a central location for all of your safety program needs. Check out spotlightsafetyapp.com. We are available to answer questions and to help you with regulatory requirements. And for any tier 2 or other compliance needs you have, please don't hesitate to reach out anytime. This is a monthly educational free resource, so feel free to follow our LinkedIn or YouTube profiles, and you will see future events pop up in your feed for learning more about safety. And we're very grateful to everyone who has watched and participated today. We hope you all have a great rest of your day, and this video will be available later if you missed parts of it or you want to send it to someone else. So we'll see you next time.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Bye-bye.